I'll wait for. We'll be just a moment or two longer. Thank you for your patience. Welcome everyone. This is the May 18th, 2023 regular meeting of the Encinitas Planning Commission, and I am calling it to order at 6:05 p.m. We have a roll call is next up, and I can see that I have all 5 of our planning commissioners are present this evening, and we like to start each meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you join me, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We start each meeting with oral communications, where anyone wishing to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda can do so by filling out a white speaker slip. I'll ask our clerk, do we have any oral comments this evening?
We do. We have 4 speakers.
All right.
The first is Ellen Bunn, followed by Jerry Ann Kessler, Sheila Cameron, and Dennis Caden.
Thank you. I'll mention these items on oral communications will be, we'll hear your comments, but there will be no staff, or the commission will not address your concerns at this point, although we may refer you to staff if required. Sorry, I don't have all my script written out for that one. Let's start it off.
Can you hear me now?
Sorry, you couldn't hear me. I'm trying to make.
Good evening, Commission. I'm here because I've been here before. This is about affordable housing, not this specific thing tonight, although some may apply. I came here before for Fox Point, asking for there to be a program, a open forum where affordable housing was explained to the community in its entirety, in detail, exactly how it actually works. We have a situation now where the stubby little tail of affordable housing is wagging the giant dog of development, okay? I understand that now, in most cases, there are pro formas for how a project is going to be built, especially if it's a condominium, how the units are going to be paid for. But I don't think there's anything about a pro forma for the HOA operation and maintenance and assessment, which is significant in this time and day, not only for insurance, but for reserves and just the maintenance of a place. I frankly don't know how a low-income family can afford the monthly maintenance fees of what it should be in most of these places, but we don't know. We don't have any information. The other part is that it's a bifurcated system you have here, which is not fair to the citizens and taxpayers or to you. You're passing judgment on something, and then it's going to the city, and the city is turning around and being asked to kick in money to make it happen. I doubt if most people know that the city has kicked in guarantee of about $1 million for Fox Point affordable housing. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I think there needs to be more transparency, more explanation of exactly how much things cost, who's paying for them, and how much you're going to get. And also consider the burden you will be putting, in many instances, on an HOA who is not experienced in this kind of situation. Thank you.
Jerry Ann Kessler.
I would like to speak about the potential density bonus housing project on Melba Road that is slated to take down 175 trees, 30 smaller trees and native shrubs, and demoing 3 beautiful historical homes built in 1938 and another beautiful home built in 1980s on the property. These 3 existing homes already provide low-income housing for the community. As I have mentioned before, the developer and owner continue to meet with the neighbors to find common ground. I would love to report there is some progress, but I cannot. These meetings only bring anxiety along with a sense of helplessness to these longtime tax-paying senior citizens, which has been going on for 3.5 years, along with the added stress brought on by the pandemic. It has especially caused stress with the residents with the boundary trees due to the way the owner and developer are not familiar with Encinitas boundary tree guidelines and the lack of consideration for these neighbors. I want to point out again that these seniors simply look out their windows and know that their tree canopy is going to be taken from them. And this is not the way to treat Encinitas longtime tax-paying senior citizens populations, especially since they've always coexisted peacefully. This property is rich in Encinitas history and has been used for agricultural purposes throughout the years. If you walk the property, you see that this is one of the last remaining open spaces in the area, and it's loaded with mature Torrey pine trees that could be close to 100 years old, and also serves as our neighborhood's unofficial wildlife corridor. To quote a term used last night from a resident in the meeting, it serves as a linear park for the neighborhood. I listened to that city council meeting last night that dealt with a large community on Crest and surrounding areas that have been dealing with this sinkhole since January or February and the increased traffic concerns. It was nice to see the council listening to the community's needs with a quick and timely resolution for them. I would like to point out that the Melba connects to Crest, and everything that was mentioned about the rural and historical significance of this area also pertains to Melba Road and our surrounding area. This is why I'm continuing to ask for support for the community by acquiring this property with soft green infrastructure funding, community funding, state or federal grants, or bond for open space. This property is ideal for a walkable park, an outdoor STEM lab for the area schools, an annex for the botanical gardens, or a park similar to San Diego Park in Solana Beach. Also, let's not forget the Leucadian residents that can't walk across the street safely and have been waiting for a roundabout for many years because the infrastructure needs have never been met. I would love to see a quick resolution for any one of their needs rather than placing these housing projects that just don't fit the area at all. Thank you for listening.
Sheila Cameron.
Doyle, Ryan, Dalton. Is this the Irish Mafia or what? Sheila Cameron. Good evening, Chairman Doyle and Planning Commissioners. I'm requesting that you please reopen the public comment period on Agenda Item 8A. It is important to the citizens that all planning commissioners and members are present to hear the testimony from the citizens about this important project, especially because the community of Leucadia representative, Christine Ryan, was absent at the initial May 4th meeting. The entire body of commissioners needs to hear input from the citizens in order to be able to give an informed and reasoned vote on the various elements of this complicated Piraeus Point project. I suggest that perhaps closing the public comment period when the meeting was not expected to be continued to another date may have been premature. The planning commissioners are the representatives of the citizens of each of our 5 communities, and we rely on you as our conduit to the mayor and council. So please, please reopen the public hearing portion of the 8A agenda item tonight, that all our concerns can be heard. Speakers will be brief. With much appreciation, Sheila Cameron.
Dennis Caden.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dennis Caden. I also am asking you the same thing. There's so much information to be processed, and this particular one seems to have enough bucket full of constraints and concerns that we ask you to open it up again, if that was not your intent, to please open it up again. But I believe your intent was to get new information from new people, and so we ask you to do that, especially since Chris was not here that day. We want to be heard, and she's our Leucadia representative, so thank you. Please give us a shot for the sake of information.
That's it for oral communications. We will move on. Our next item up is changes to the agenda, and I am going to propose a change. We have, I know from experience that Commissioner Prendergast is going to be recusing himself from item 8A, and so I would like to propose we move items 8B, the Versailles Cafe and Pastries, and items 9, 10, and 11 before adjournment up, and we hear them immediately after this. And there is nothing on the consent calendar.
I would second that.
Thank you. I got a motion and a second. Can we vote on this thing yet? Or should we do a verbal? Oh, no, it's catching up. I think it was Commissioner Dalton who seconded.
Right.
Are we voting verbally?
Yeah, let's just vote verbally. I'll say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
All right. The change passes unanimously, and I'm going to move directly on to item 8B, which is the Versailles Cafe and Pastries. Let me switch glasses here. This is case number multi 4872-2021. It's a public hearing to allow the sale of beer and wine, a Type 41 ABC license at an existing restaurant. Project's located at 204 North El Camino Real, Suite H. And I believe Sarah Cadona is our assistant planner, is handling this. If you could give us a staff presentation, that would rock. Did I get that wrong? No. No?
Good evening, Commissioners and Chair Doyle. My name is Sarah Cadona, Assistant Planner with the City of Encinitas. And this item is regarding case number multi-004821, 2021. The application is a request for a minor use permit to allow the sale of beer and wine, which is a Type 41 ABC license, for on-site consumption for an existing restaurant located at 204 North El Camino Real, Suite H. The project site is a building within an existing commercial center that is located at the intersection of Via Molena and North El Camino Real. This project site is also located within the general commercial zone. This slide demonstrates the existing site plan and floor plan. Highlighted in red is the Versailles location. This application does not include any modifications to the site plan, off-street parking, and/or number of dining and bar seats. Some key project features are it's a Type 41 ABC license, which would authorize on-site consumption for beer and wine only. No distilled spirits are allowed on site, and the consumption is limited to the restaurant interior. No outdoor consumption is to occur at any time. The restaurant's hours of operation are from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. The operating hours for the requested beer and wine service are Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Food and service shall be available during all hours of operation. No live entertainment is proposed except the restaurant's current sound system and television. Sorry. A CPP meeting was held on April 23rd, 2022, and one neighbor attended expressing concerns about the area and hours in which alcoholic beverages are proposed to be sold. The applicant provided further clarification that alcoholic beverages will be sold only inside the premises dining areas and not sold in the outdoor patio area. And alcohol will be sold during dinner time hours, which was originally proposed from 5 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. A citizen participation newsletter update was mailed on March 23rd, 2023. A newsletter was required due to the applicant changing the proposed hours of when alcoholic beverages are proposed to be served. The applicant is proposing the new serving hours to be Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. City staff and the applicant did not receive any comments or concerns. The public notice was mailed out May 5th, 2023, and no comments have been received. The proposed minor use permit would authorize the sale of beer and wine for on-site consumption at an existing restaurant that contributes to the daily commercial needs of the community. The proposed beer and wine service would be compatible with the existing commercial uses and would not negatively affect or conflict with the surrounding land uses or development. No adverse impacts of the proposed alcohol service to the adjacent residential uses are anticipated because of the restaurant's significant distance from the nearest residential uses. In light of the proposed operational characteristics, the project is conditioned appropriately to ensure that the proposed use would not have an adverse impact to the surrounding use or nearby neighborhood. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approves case number multi-004872, 2021, subject to the conditions of approval in the attached resolution. This concludes my staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Does anyone have any questions of staff? Bob?
Sarah, does the permit transfer upon sale to a new owner if the Versailles Cafe sells?
Yes, it would.
Okay. And a couple of the restaurants in the area, I'm thinking Craftsman, and then across the parking lot, Forchetta and Rubio's, they have an enclosed, not an enclosed patio, but a barrier around the patio. So if you buy a beer inside Rubio's, you can sit outside. Is this applicant proposing that not to be the case? Does he not have a patio that is, quote, enclosed, and he desires not to sell to somebody sitting on the patio?
Yeah, they do not have a fully enclosed patio, so per ABC, they are not allowed to serve alcohol within the outdoor patio area.
So if the applicant comes back, builds a barrier, does
They
he?
could do a use permit modification,
And they'd come back to Planning Commission and thus the community? Okay,
and then it would also be design review for the outdoor patio.
thank you.
Anyone else? No, personally, I found this request unremarkable and seemed on par with other restaurants in the area. Sorry, public comments, oh my God. I wasn't expecting any public comments here. Do we have any public comments on this item?
Yes, we do. We have two speakers.
Excellent, well, let's hear them.
First up is Joan Dodge, followed by Ron Dodge.
I've kind of screwed up here. Should I switch back?
Good evening, I'm Joan Dodge. I
Joan?
come tonight in
Joan?
support.
Before
Yes.
you start, I think I've got a point of order. I should have let the applicant to make a presentation before I did public comments. Would you be okay with that? Of course. Thank you. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation? You may have to come back up, Joan.
I'm Joan Dodge. I come here in support of the applicant for Versailles to have the liquor license, the wine and beer. I don't know if any of you have been to this restaurant, but the macarons are to die for, and the and don't get me started on the croissants; they're just unbelievable. But in addition to these lovely pastries, there's a whole menu of savory items that are just wonderful. Things like the classic French omelet, or salads, or sandwiches, or quiche, or crepes, or even burgers. I've been very fortunate in my life to be able to be in Paris several times, and I love French food. And when I'm at Versailles, I feel like I'm having a taste of France. But when I'm having that salade niçoise with anchovies, I think, gosh, a glass of crisp Chablis would be fabulous with this. Or the duck rillette sandwich would be great with a Pinot. Or if my husband, who you'll meet obviously momentarily, if he wants a burger, he'd like a beer. The El Camino corridor is just chock-a-block with chain restaurants and chain stores. What we need to do as citizens of Encinitas and as leaders in our community, like the Planning Commission, is support these small, locally owned businesses because they add a certain, shall I say, je ne sais quoi, to our community. And so please, Commission, approve this application because it only supports these small local businesses that we want to continue to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
Ron Dodge.
Good evening, Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm notoriously soft-spoken. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about this request, and I'm going to speak on in support of the permit. And I'll also point out that I'm a member of the El Camino Real Specific Plan Task Force. So, but I'm speaking for myself. As we can see around us, the bricks and mortar retail business is changing. Some of it quickly, some of it a little much slower. And it's shifting more toward services, experiences, and entertainment in those brick and mortar establishments, whereas the retail is tending to shift to a bit more of online. So some of our buildings are becoming a little more vacant. And consistent with the support idea of El Camino as a destination, a place to dine, a place to meet up, to enjoy ourselves, our neighbors, is something that would be very welcome in the neighborhood. I've met up with many a person there. It's an excellent fit, an inducement for the vision of El Camino as a destination, as a communal space. Further, Versailles is a participating member of our community. I did see them participating at the State of the City meeting and participating full-heartedly. So I'll ask that you please approve the permit for Versailles Cafe to have their beer and wine permit so that people can enjoy a full experience there in the corridor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
We do have one more speaker, Sheila Cameron.
Sheila Cameron, Lacadia. I'm not a square or a prude. 8 o'clock in the morning, you're serving beer and wine. 11 o'clock on is fine. Most people come in for lunch. I don't even think in France, and I've been there a couple of times myself, in Paris, that people are drinking beer and wine at 8 in the morning. We're getting a little carried away with this in this city. We have a lot of beer and wine and a lot of other drinks going on. And all I'm asking is you really think about this and back this off a little. 11 a.m. is fine. That's the lunch hour starts. Great. Anybody wants to drink the rest of the day, they can do it. But 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm sorry. That is really out of line. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I believe that it for public speakers. And applicant no response. I'm going to close public comment on this item and open this up to commission deliberation.
I'm in support of the project. I like one of the speakers' comment that local restaurants instead of national chains should be supported in our city. Beer and wine seems like an appropriate beverage to have with the food that they're serving, and it's indoors. I don't think it has any effect on a residential neighborhood. I'm not concerned about the hours. If it matches their business hours, that's fine with me.
So I would agree, and I can also think of situations where, like a mimosa, for instance, which is a breakfast beverage that contains wine, or I don't know if champagne's considered a wine technically. I'm not an expert in that field, but a mimosa to have at breakfast at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning, I think, is something that people do. So I support it as stated.
Oh, go ahead, Susan.
Yeah.
I agree. I would be in support, and I think that it's very consistent with what we're allowing other establishments.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, I agree. I think the 8 to 10, although I've reacted to the 8 o'clock a couple of times, the first time I heard it, it is common, and it's not widely abused. And I feel, just as you say, mimosas and I forget what, I don't drink a lot of brunch drinks, but I know they exist. For a local business, I feel this is the kind of business we want to support. And it's on par with everyone else in the community. It's hard making a living as a restaurant, and sometimes that little bit of beer and wine is the thing that keeps you going another month. So I'll go out and make a motion that we approve this as per staff recommendation.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Should we do an oral vote again? No, I've got it. Got it? Excellent. It's really close. A motion to adjourn is perhaps premature. So we'll go with an oral vote.
Aye.
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 And aye. Seems like we have a unanimous vote for the Versailles Cafe and Pastries. And that item's closed. Going to move on with the last items on the agenda before we jump back to item 8A. Are there any future items added by the planning commissioners? Hearing none. Do we have any planning commission reports? Anyone done anything interesting last 2 weeks? I'll move on to item 11, secretary
Well,
reports.
was notified by Melinda that we will have an El Camino Real corridor specific plan task force meeting the first week of June.
Oh, excellent.
And so that's coming up. Yeah.
Thanks. One of the most exciting corridors here. Thank you, Susan. I will move on to item 11, secretary reports from Anna Kalamusi.
Yes, the only item I have is that the safety element that you all heard is anticipated to go to City Council June 14th. That's all I have.
Cool. Thank you. And the next item up, now we've cleared those items, is what I think everyone's here for, item 8A, project name Piraeus Point. This is case number multi 5158-2022. Properties located at the northeast corner of Piraeus Street and Plato Place. Not going to go through the full description. I'm just going to jump through up to disclosures. I know we have several.
Yes, I'd like to read a statement. As you may know, I am a commercial real estate agent. I might become involved in a business transaction involving Lennar Homes, a developer of the Piraeus property. My completion of that transaction may directly affect my personal finances and those of my employer, Jones Lang LaSalle. Because I believe in the integrity of the process, to avoid any appearance of impropriety, I've decided to recuse myself from consideration of this item. I will now leave the room and will return for the next agenda item, which I think is already passed, after the commission's consideration of this item is complete. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And since we've cleared you out, I think you're next up here on June 1st.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And then I will point out for the record that Commissioner Ryan, as many of you may be aware, Commissioner Ryan was absent at the last meeting. However, she actually watched the entire presentation live, and she's reviewed the entire record. And because she is fully aware of everything that's happened. She's read the documentation. She is fully able to participate at this time.
Thank you. Everyone's comfortable with that? We will move on, and we left this, we had just started our commission deliberations. And, oh my, where do we start? Does anyone want to leap off? Did you want staff to summarize? Oh, yeah, staff.
I don't mind. I can go.
Before we do, let's have staff summarize our position up to this moment.
Thank you. So we left the last meeting, we left off with a presentation, the public comment period ending and being closed, and the planning commission basically beginning deliberation. I did also want to note that we did receive a letter from Caltrans today, which after review does not change the city's position. The applicant will coordinate with Caltrans to resolve any comments received prior to construction. Any changes that end up, if there are any changes that need to be done, it either goes through a substantial conformance review or it goes through a modification and a further environmental review as a result.
Thank you. Saved me a question there, because that was the number one thing on my agenda. Susan, why don't you kick us off?
I would like to move that we reopen public comment.
I'll make a point of order here before we move forward on that motion. If public comment is to be reopened, it does not mean that anyone who spoke last week gets to speak again. That's double dipping. We're still in the same meeting that we started 2 weeks ago. Just not sure everyone understood that. So we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Should we, let's see if we can do this voting thing here. We're close. We're just not getting to the part where we vote. Huh. It feels almost like progress.
Is there discussion between a motion and the vote, or is it from a motion just straight to a vote?
Actually, we can have discussion on the vote before we move forward. That is proper, is it not? Yes. Our attorney nods his head and says yes. I'll open this item for discussion before we go to vote then. Steve? Guessing you, maybe.
Well, we heard 2 hours of discussion last week. I feel like everybody had an opportunity to say their piece. We need to ultimately come to some sort of decision, whether we deny the project or approve the project or whatever, but I don't think, I've been reading a lot of incoming email and correspondence, and nothing seems to be different than what was expressed last week. And last week was an opportunity for anybody. We did not cut the public comment short last week, or 2 weeks ago, sorry. Right? Everybody that wanted to speak had an opportunity to speak. And so it's not that we had ran out of time and shut down the public comment early. It had run its course, and we finished and concluded that portion. So in my mind, I'd like to get straight to discussion and make a vote on the project one way or the other.
Well, actually, we do have new information from Caltrans. We had this little report and recommending hydrology and drainage studies. So I think that there is new information, and I also believe in a project like this, which has been contentious in our community ever since we've had the upzoning of our parcels, our 15 parcels, that if people express that they want the comment reopened, it's our duty to listen. We're here to listen.
have a question for our clerk this evening. Do we have a record of our speakers from last week?
I can go to my office and get it. I don't have it with me now.
Because, well, if the vote does say that we are to reopen, you're going to be running off of there. We'll take a break then. Because, as I said, we are still in the same meeting that we started 2 weeks ago. Nothing's changed. So, do we have any idea how people have been submitting speaker slips already, just in case?
Yes, we have 15 speakers with some
All right.
time donations.
I'm going to ask a question of the audience. How many people have submitted, of those 15 people spoke here 2 weeks ago? Come on, we'll look it up. Just one of you? Well, 14 new speakers. To Steve Dalton's point, we did not cut anyone's time. We gave everyone 3 minutes. We allowed time donations of 2. Yes, thank you. So there's 2 here. You've got one in too. Like I say, we are going to check because honestly, if this goes and we do reopen, we will be here for, I don't know. We won't even be getting to deliberations until after 8, would be my guess. I know. That's okay. I mean, we haven't been doing anything interesting for the last few months. I mean, honestly, it's been a pretty slow agenda the last few months. I mean, I'd say, I don't really know where I'm going to go. You want to put this up to a vote? Yep. Well, I'm going to err on the side of the public and say aye.
There you go.
Oh, we're voting on this thing now. Oh, great. All right, the vote is 3-1 with one recusal on this, since we have a member missing. And it is now 6:47, and as soon as we can get this, are we done? Okay. I'm gonna call a 5-minute recess.
See, he lives on Plato, and so does my dad. He lives on Plato, and so does my dad.
We live right next door.
So it's 8,000.
I own a property.
Are you going to speak? Yes. Good.
Yeah, I'm not gonna read this, I can summarize it. Summarize it, they can handle themselves, the whole point is that, how can you move forward this without having to know all the facts?
Yeah, well, in the hydrology, that's a new wrinkle, hydrology requirement, which was not part of the original, presentation last week or 2 weeks ago. The thing is, they, I don't know if you were here 2 weeks ago? So, in the presentation, NAR requested an exemption from having to bury the SDG power lines because of economics. Then that means they're never going to bury those the power lines are unsightly and way out of date. Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to ask if you could grab a seat and get ready for the show. We're going to try and call 3 speakers at once. I'm going to make a point of order here. If you spoke last time, you don't get to speak again tonight. If you donated your time to someone last week, you don't get to speak or donate it again this time. We still have plenty of speakers here. We're not cutting anyone's down. We're not cutting down time donations. We're just making sure everyone gets their say. Let's start off with the first 3 speakers.
First is Jim Brackus, followed by Ray Gutowski and Kathleen Leese.
Jim Brackus, I want to say thank you for letting us talk again. I'm going to go over some stuff, and Commissioner Doyle, yes, I'm going to go over some stuff that was talked about last week, because it's just like kids with e-bikes. You got to take them away if they don't obey the rules. Sometimes you got to take away multiple times. So let me get over this description. I'm going to use the term powers to be. That is going to be the Council, Planning Commission, and Traffic. I'm going to tell you that I bought my house 1996. I was able to go north and south on 5 from Piraeus, Lucadia, okay? Something happened. I went to my first city council meeting in 1998. 300 of us were here, cops, everybody. 12:30 at night, the city council goes, oh, we're going to keep Piraeus open. Well, that didn't happen. So the minute you failed at that, I wanted to know, why wasn't there a light bulb in planning that said the next opportunity, we're going to open up Lucadia north and south from Piraeus? 25 years ago, guys, no light bulb. 15 years ago, you guys knew about the housing element. Anybody talk to Caltrans about opening up 5? No, nobody did. We're still in a dilemma, okay? $1 trillion expansion, and we've got nothing going on. Now, I got to say this real quick because Luke brought it up. You guys are a quiet little neighborhood. None of you live in my neighborhood. I'm the local realtor. I mail to all these people. I've been in half their houses. The problem is you built Disneyland in our quiet little neighborhood. Are you crazy? You messed up the parking on Olympus and Carter. Now what happened? What comes with Disneyland? Disneyland maintenance. In 1 year, you've already had to replace the fake grass for the slide area. You just got done doing grass and a new irrigation system, all in 1 year. Just terrible. Let's get to the project real quick. Guess what this is? And I have 3 extra minutes, by the way. The extra other thing here, let's talk about the project. What is it called? It's our gateway to Encinitas. What have you done? Coming down 5 South, go through La Costa, what are we going to look at? A light bulb of 149 units on the east side. Why? Just absolutely why? So if you don't, and the other thing is here too, the soils. You guys are failing to look at the soils correctly. Why? Because half these people's homes have had slope failures. Just ask the HOA at Skyloft the money they've spent on that. Okay? Half the houses, some of the houses I've sold, have 3-inch slopes. You want more evidence? Come to my house, my crack slab in my game room. So you're having a hard time with this soils thing. So what do we got? Poor environmental, poor soil site. Traffic nightmare. Sidewalk to Capri, none. Why not? Well, Capri's full. Where are these kids going to school? Where? We're supposed to be a green environment. All this car traffic? Somebody wake up. Just somebody wake up. So this street right here, school. Public transportation, none. Access to shopping, none. Where is site L7 in the future? It's flat, it's buildable, it was zoned for a school. Got a problem with that. So let's stop destroying this neighborhood. Now about this site, 29-foot wall. How are they going to secure it? Well, you guys don't even know, because the last meeting, you didn't even have a plan for the map or the walls. Are they going to put anchors into the bad soil? Very good, very good, very good. Dave Baxter, let's get on to the traffic, okay? you need to look. So the deal is that on the traffic, anybody know how much money Carlsbad spent on their light timing on the expansion of La Costa? A boatload. There are 5 lights within 500 feet. At the max, going off of Piraeus, doing a left-hand turn, 4 to 5 cars max. You're going to have 14 to 1,600 cars going on trips every day. How is that even going to be? How's that even going to be handled? So what I really got a problem too is, what is this? Build as you go? Throw a plan at you guys? Then come for, revisions. That's just not right. It's just not right there. So in every event, there's winners and losers. Who's a winner? Mr. Grover and Lennar. Who's the losers? That neighborhood. Okay? And you, because we're losing respect for you. I'm blaming half the commissioners way back when for failing on the Piraeus and 5. That is a big number. That's just cradle. So, guys, make some good decisions. This is all wrong. The traffic on La Costa and Piraeus, Carlsbad's not going to help you pay. You're not going to get their ear. And you're going to do all this without even knowing the future. You failed to open up 5. You're going to create a disaster on La Costa. I just want you all to get a backbone and make a good decision. Jim Brockus, 1580 Gaskin Road.
Next speaker is Andy Gilkison with 2 time donations.
Can you check the time donations while you're at it?
Sarah Moreno and Ray Gutowski, are you here? Raise your hand, please. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's just awesome to be in front of you. Thanks for all you do. My name's Andy Gilkison, 1747 Cotter Street, part of the Dirt Road crew on Cotter. We bought our house 16 years ago, and I hope to never leave. So there's a PowerPoint, I think. I just want to go over a couple of things. The things that have been, I think, are we going to turn that on real quick? So this is really a partnership, and these are some of the questions that I have and some of the others have that we're just looking for.
Do you want to pause while we get the...
Yeah, for you all just to kind of help us
Stop
with.
the clock. We'll get you going.
Yeah. Is that it? Nope, next one. Nope. That was the person before me. Which ones would you have? The PowerPoint? Awesome. So, and I'll have you go through so you can go to the next page. So this is really a partnership. So really these are some questions and we're looking for your guidance, help in addressing these questions with us. The 35-foot high retaining walls there's some questions of viability and potential collapse from hydrostatic forces. Yep, next, yep. The premise of the wall placement is to stabilize the sensitive bluff from impacting the development below and securing the neighborhood properties. So to carve out and develop design is unique to Encinitas and creates some special circumstances. One of which obviously is none of the data presented considers the impact of the entire bluff back area all the way between Gascony. And the soil report from 2021 is not current, and as we all know, there's been some rain, and we'd like this to be addressed and answered. With the recent soil analysis performed, why wasn't it done, and would a new report data reflect changes from what just transpired over this past season? Geological reporting doesn't consider increased vibration, earth moving, or seismic activity. Based on the current design, is it reasonable to assume that less vibration or lesser seismic activity would negatively impact the bluff stability? Is there any data that addresses this? And really that's part of what we're looking for, is just to make sure that the data is there and we look at it. And how does this compare to what's going on with beacons? Is there a retaining wall plan there? And how would this work in our area if it's not going to work in that area? Is there an accurate soil matrix report that reflects the bluff stability post-cut and removal. You know, a wall height of 40 feet is pretty excessive. It's a major community concession, as well as the safety concerns for the community around it and the residents. Why is the structural design and integrity of these walls not the priority of the Planning Commission regarding the approval of the process of the project? You know, we request a structural engineering detail inclusive of soil matrix, walls footing, wall construct, anchoring plan, detail and explanation of what soil type is present at the anchor point, and provides like a reference of what like type wall construction, the same bluff and soil conditions. And, you know, really what are we anchoring to? And is it gonna be stable? Until this data is made available, we just ask the considerations and the approval process be looked at, be considered to look at before this happens. The retaining wall utility poles, you know, we kind of like when the poles are removed. Instead of, you know, that's kind of one of the requirements of the city in most projects. So to keep them is a major concession, but also each pole has a restriction that requires a 10-foot perimeter and 15 feet deep isolation. The 12,000 square feet of undisturbed area that cannot be anchored into. So we ask for review and sign off on this wall to pole installation by SDG&E prior to moving forward with the approval. Is SDG&E aware of this pole installation and anchoring? You know, the legal liability of the future wall issues per city of Encinitas falls into the Paredes Point homeowners. Does this include the low-income homeowners? Is there a cap to their responsibility? And when is this responsibility disclosed to the home buyer? Yep, next one. So the 1 acre gift equals 15% of parcel A with a value of over $1 million. Just reflects a major injustice to the residents, we feel, in Encinitas, as this lost revenue could be used for some vital infrastructure projects. And, you know, why is the city giving this land away? Is there something, you know, that we're getting in return because of that? And what becomes of this designated vacation if the development changes or is not approved? Just, we have some roof deck concerns. This is the same picture, just different lights, and you can see that, you know, this is what a two four-story-like complexes in Carlsbad looks like. The one on the left is up close, the one on the right is distance. You know, as they say, a single candle lights the entire room. And the impact of the rooftop decks is a major concern for us, just based on the size of it. In addition to the lighting, it violates Leucadia's dark sky mandate, and the nuisance from noise and entertainment systems, gatherings, exceeds the current local ordinances to the detriment of the local community. This is another of the major concerns. And how does the HOA plan to mitigate the lighting and the noise issue? How does the city plan to enforce this dark sky mandate and nuisance noise ordinance? And the residents find these dark uncharacteristic to the local community and a loss of privacy. There is no like list to this design in Encinitas, so we request examples of similar design developments placed in similar communities as a reference. Safe route to school, I think this, you know, my daughter it goes to Capri, so it's pretty important. That's Plato West on the left and Plato South. You can see there's just not a lot of room to walk up the hill. Traffic is a problem there, and and on the next page you can see there's not a lot of room to expand sidewalks with, there's no walkway space. So Capri, full capacity by 2025. No pedestrians or bicycle pathway between Paredes Point and Capri, as the photos show. Plato is 20 feet wide with no viable means of construct pathways. You know, law mandates pathways be present. So a feasibility, safety, impact study should be conducted to address this need to impact the local property and traffic. So we request such a study be conducted by an independent consultant and include the project's detail prior to moving forward. Air quality concerns, we feel LDN ignored these air pollution effects on located in neighborhood in the Bataquitas Lagoon. Large diesel earth-moving equipment and 8,000 large dump trucks will create excessive emissions, far in excess of the already existing I-5 exposure. Airborne dust and silica pollution would be carried well beyond the community for 11 months. How has this air quality issue been addressed in planning, and who's responsible for maintaining our current air quality conditions? So we request an independent air quality monitor be added to the project for the duration and have these test results as part of the daily construction report. So, you know, some of these seem small, some seem larger, but we all, you know, want to share with you and work with you to make sure these are addressed so that we know it's the best decision for not only the community, but for our area as well. Thank you.
Next up is Kathleen Leese with two time donations from Dennis Leese and Ron Dodge. Can Dennis and Ron please raise your hand? Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. And the reason I'm speaking tonight is because there was virtually no information at the last meeting about Piraeus, and Piraeus is significant to our community. So, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Kathleen Lees. My husband Dennis and I moved into our house on Urania in June 1998. Southbound Piraeus was closed the following August or October. This is the issue that got me to my first City Council meeting. I appreciate the opportunity to provide a bit of history and hopefully gain your support improving our situation. This is always difficult, speaking like this. In the 1960s, when the freeway was built, Piraeus was designed to be the access road for the entire area, which is kind of like an island. Piraeus and Saxony are the only streets that run north and south between La Costa Avenue and Leucadia Boulevard. And only Normandy runs east and west. It all began with the development of the Ecke Ranch property and the extension of Leucadia Boulevard from the I-5 freeway to El Camino Real. When Leucadia Boulevard opened, Piraeus access to Leucadia Boulevard was closed. Signs diverted all southbound traffic into the neighborhood, down Normandy, then Urania to get to Leucadia Boulevard. Thank you for putting that up. You can see that up here. That created a frantic situation because the city of Encinitas hadn't made any preparations for the diverted traffic. I spent the last few days going through paperwork that covers the original planning, and I can attest that the neighbors have made extensive efforts to have the situation corrected. As a group and individually, we have worked with city staff and the engineers they hired to deal with Caltrans, and through them with Caltrans and Sandag. We have given our tours. We have organized and attended meetings, met with city council members, circulated petitions, done our own traffic surveys, raised funds, and hired attorneys. Both times turned out the same. City staff and their engineers devised plans to improve access to and from Piraeus. Lots of meetings with Caltrans to get their approval and our city council's agreement to move ahead with the proposed changes. In both cases, there were further meetings the neighbors did not know to attend, where plans were changed back to what Caltrans originally wanted. Both times we thought we had an agreement, only to be disappointed. What is Caltrans? What's important to Caltrans? Caltrans has two concerns. Number one is that the northbound off-ramp exit is immediately across Leucadia Boulevard from the entrance to Piraeus. They fear someone might accidentally drive north from the freeway into the southbound lane of Piraeus. Number two is keeping cars moving across the bridge and through their intersections on either side of the bridge. They want traffic moving as quickly and smoothly as possible. Allowing access to Piraeus interferes with that efficiency. Caltrans Design's guidelines are only concerned with the safety of the roads that they are responsible for. It is up to the city to defend their neighborhoods, and so far we have not been defended. This little corner of Northeast Leucadia is unique and complicated. Everyone who drives into the neighborhood for the first time usually gets lost because many of the streets don't connect and pedestrian-only paths between streets aren't helpful if you're driving. Most of our streets are only 18 to 20 feet wide. The wider streets are in developments built since 2000. In my count, 109 new houses have been built in this area in the past 23 years. Piraeus Point is adding 149 units in one project. It is clear that our infrastructure is out of sync with our population growth. We're not alone. As you know, other neighborhoods in Leucadia are facing the same, even more dire situations. The city now has to pay for infrastructure that used to be the developer's responsibility. What can the city do now? Lower the speed limit on Piraeus, post it clearly and enforce it. Currently posted at 45 miles per hour, but everyone drives faster. Determine possible traffic calming measures. Do a study now to determine available setbacks on Piraeus. Soon as possible, the city should determine what rights of way it has on Piraeus. Most of our safe way to school sidewalks have been paid for by grants. In order to apply for grants, we need to know where sidewalks can be built and possibly the street widened. Start the process now for a safe way to school sidewalk on Plato from Piraeus Condor. Kids living at Piraeus Point will be able to walk to preschool, but it won't be safe for them to walk up Plato during the get the kids to school rush of traffic. A major solution for our traffic problems is to persuade the Encinitas Union School District to build a school on the 4 acres they own on Quail Gardens Drive. Approximately 700 students attend Capri School. The parameters are west from 101, east to El Camino Real, north from La Costa Avenue, and south to Encinitas Boulevard. Obviously, most of those children can't walk to school, so they're driven. The state subsidized school buses when Piraeus was closed. The traffic problems increased when the buses stopped. Thus, we can presume that having kids go to school closer to where they live will cut down on traffic. Another issue is the pollution caused by all those cars, many of which are idling while they wait in line to drop off or pick up their children. Olympus Park, city's newest and most fun park, is within walking distance of this project. This is especially significant since Piraeus Point doesn't provide any outdoor play areas and Capri School playgrounds are closed when it's not in session. The most direct route is straight down Piraeus, but without sidewalks, it's dangerous, especially when walking with strollers or kids on bikes. There is a longer, less direct route using existing safe way to school sidewalks and the pedestrian pathway from Wood to Olympus. Olympus Park doesn't have restrooms and parking is limited, so a safe, direct, and walkable route to the park is essential. And we are a dark skies neighborhood. We are an official dark skies neighborhood. So whatever kind of lighting does go onto those rooftops has to only be focused down. So I presume that the city staff has picked that up. And if you have any questions, I have piles of information about all of these meetings and everything that we've had with the city and Caltrans and Sandag. So if you'd like to see any of that, I'd be happy to show it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Next up is Carlin Schmink with one time dedication from Andy Gilkison. Will you please raise your hand, Andy? Okay. So Andy is up with a time dedication from Carlin. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Next up is David Gotti.
Right here. Hi. Thanks for listening to me about this. I'm not going to talk about any of the environmental stuff. I'm just going to talk on the traffic. I live right off of on Gascony, and I take Skyloft down the hill every day, several times a day. It is a problem now just to be able to go north on Piraeus and then to get on to take a left on La Costa Avenue. I often have to wait for 2 light turns to do that. Now, if you're going to have 150 residences on this, right on between Skyloft and the turn to go to La Costa, the traffic's going to be an absolute nightmare there. It's already bad. You're going to require many infrastructure changes, and I think it's just an impending disaster. And I really, at this point, would hope that you would seriously take a look at the traffic. The number 2 speaker, I thought, outlined all types of hydrological, soils, activities. All these things really need to be very closely examined before any type of approval on this process is made. Thank you.
Next up is Roberta McGregor. She wants to show a video. It's, Dave, it's the video with the red start.
Didn't we see this last week? Exact same video. Again, is this different? Is this new?
I believe it's the same
Stop
one.
this video, please. Come on, guys. I talked about double dipping. We saw this video. It's a long one. We know. And I think Chris has now seen it twice. I've seen it twice because I. If
Next-
you haven't seen it, you can watch the recording of our meeting from last week when it played in its entirety.
Next up is Terry Vinard with no time dedications.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Terry Vinard. I've lived on Carter Street for 48 years now, and I've seen a lot of changes made in the area. I remember when children and adults both would ride horses down the street, and the cars were very respectful of them and just backed off and let them get where they're going. I live about 3 blocks from the Capri School. I'm not sure when the buses stopped running, but it certainly changed the traffic speed and volume when that happened. Certain drop-off and pickup times, the traffic really backs up, and gridlock makes it impossible to get to a medical appointment or other time-sensitive appointment that you have to go to. Capri School is at capacity, so the children from 149 Piraeus Street project would have to be driven to another school, which would further impact air quality and life in the area. Greenhouses have been torn down. There are at least 12, maybe more, parcels probably within a mile of my residence that have been built since I have resided here. Every one of those projects has had to put their utilities underground. Ironically, a 5-lot land developer on the south side of Plato in Piraeus had to have their utilities undergrounded. It seems impossible that the Piraeus Point project on the opposite side of Plato could be exempted from this requirement. It seemed like a libel discrimination problem that a 5-lot parcel had to underground, but a 149-unit project is not going to be required to, or is exempt from being required to. Please respect our quality of life and don't increase the traffic even more. Thank you.
Next up is Michael George. Michael George. Michael George.
Wait, I'm not allowed to speak, but someone's gonna give me a time. Can they give him time because? That's okay. I'll do it without it. Shar Spires?
That's okay. My name is Michael George. I reside at 1703 Gascony Road, Encinitas. I'm also the treasurer of the Skyloft Homeowner Association. And I'm not going to go over all these details because you have all that information in front of you.
and I'm not going to bore you to death with it, okay? Because you have all the information, and as the gentleman said, you have to make a decision. And obviously, it's a very important decision because there wouldn't be this many people here at the supper hour unless they were concerned about something. So I'll just use a little different approach with you. I'll try a little didactic approach. Okay, so do you know what a historic view shed is? Do you know where we have one? It's on Gascony Road, and it's above this project. And I would like to know why the developer refused to put up story poles so that we could see if the height of the structures are going to interfere with that historic view shed. Maggie Houlihan was the mayor when this was put into effect. There is a plaque on the site designating it as a historic view shed. Thank you. That's my first point. My second point, I'd like you all to consider this question. Why would this project require so many waivers? Think about that. There has to be a reason why it requires so many waivers. Maybe it's inappropriate, and that's why they need all the waivers. You can look at me and say, it's inappropriate to you, Mike George, but not to Leonard or whoever the developers are. Is it a point of view? I don't think so. I think there's facts here. You have all the facts in front of you. You can make the right decision tonight. It's up to you to do the right thing. Thank you very much.
Mark Smithson with no time dedication.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Smithson. I reside at 754 Plato Place. The reason I'm here tonight is for a few reasons. Right now, there's 6 houses on our street, approximately 24 residents. This project wants to bring in, 150 condos? 3 people per, what's that, about 450 people at the end of the street? 450 people on the street where 24 people live. Okay, my landlord, Mr. Edwin Turner, he's been here for over 65 years. And with all the dust from these piles of dust from these dirt that they want to take out of the project and put in and this and that, we're only 100 yards from the construction site. And with the onshore breeze, I can only imagine how that's going to affect an elder person's health. And it makes me worried. I don't want to bother you with too much more of my time, but I'm just against the project. Thank you.
Next up is Kim Cassett with 1 time dedication. Will Candace Shire, please? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kim. I'm reading for Candace. I live at 1758 Burgundy Road. Traffic. We are very opposed to the Praias Point project as it relates to transportation and fire emergencies. With an additional 894 vehicle ADT average daily trips provided information by the developer, the project without any new or revised street infrastructure is ludicrous, dangerous, and irresponsible. There's no stoplights, no stop signs, and it will equal traffic accidents for current residents using Piraeus and for the new 355 Piraeus Point residents, considering each Piraeus Point resident has a vehicle. This will put the city of Encinitas liable for accidents and deaths due to the lack of responsibility and safety of their citizens. Does the city plan on any stoplights or stop signs on Plato and Piraeus? The traffic study provided by the city of Encinitas cannot be accurate in the section of LOS, level of service. La Costa Avenue in both directions, east and west, is already at standstill in the morning, noon, and night. Current residents are using Piraeus to get to the 5 freeway via La Costa will sit through several light changes before accessing La Costa. In addition, there is no direct access from Piraeus to Leucadia Boulevard to the 5 north and southbound freeways. All vehicles go through back streets to access Leucadia Boulevard. Does the city plan on reopening access to Leucadia Boulevard from Piraeus? When there is an accident on the 5 freeway northbound before and between Leucadia Boulevard and La Costa, Piraeus becomes the go-around, impacting current residents with lines of cars lined up on Piraeus. This will tie up and become the norm if Piraeus Point is approved without any safety or infrastructure changes. Side streets like Normandy are not designed to carry the additional automobiles from Piraeus Point project. Does the city plan on making changes to the signal lights on La Costa and Piraeus to allow more than 5 cars from Piraeus to enter La Costa westbound to get access to the Interstate 5 north and south? Fire and emergency. In an event of a fire, police or other emergency vehicles requiring said vehicle to enter the park would block Piraeus Point residents from vacating from their safety due to blockage by emergency vehicles. With only one way in and one way out on Piraeus for residents, this puts them in dire straits in the event of an evacuation. Will the city request the developer to change the emergency gate on Plato to be capable of opening for residents to vacate in an event of an emergency? This will again put the city of Encinitas liable for injuries or deaths due to the lack of safety of their citizens. The following has already been addressed by many citizens who live near and around the project, and it serves as a reminder to you of the valid concerns. No encroachment into the sensitive inland bluff, deny construction and retaining wall in excess of 30 feet high, undergrounding of utility lines, no patio deck lights or excessive noises, many conditions of to keep dark skies, not to gift the 0.96 acres of right-way. In conclusion, the city of Encinitas should scale back the project by 50%, provide street stop signs and stop lights at intersections of Plato and Piraeus, open Piraeus up to Leucadia Boulevard to provide additional access to the Interstate 5 north and southbound, adjust the traffic signal lights, Piraeus and La Costa to provide additional Plato access and residence. Sincerely, Candace and Randy. Thanks.
Michael George with no time dedications. Ugh. Okay, that's all we have.
Thank you, Michael. Is that it? All right. Can you go down the list of the slips that were for people who had already spoken?
Doug Miller spoke last time. Teresa. I can't read the last name. Starts with an O. Orleas. David Hill. Victoria Williamson. Karen Caden.
Was your name not on the list, ma'am? Did you turn in a speaker slip?
It was my husband. If you turn in a speaker slip, did you have to? Well, I guess that's a problem there. Maybe we didn't turn it in.
So. Yes. We're going to finish off. I'd like to bring back the developer or whoever's the rep tonight. Give you, I don't know, 5 minutes. Are you letting this last? No, we're done with public comment. I could close it, but I want the applicant to come out first before I close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. David Shepard with Lennar Homes. I'm not going to regurgitate everything that we've heard from 2 weeks ago and tonight, but quickly I just want to comment on a few of the things we've heard already. First of all, on the density, the issue with density. This is a housing element site and allows a density bonus application. If we wanted to maximize that, we would be coming forward with an application that has 272 homes and with 10% affordable housing. If we wanted to offer 15% affordable housing, that density number could go up to 311 homes. Instead, we felt the right number and the right project to be before you is 149 homes with 10% affordable. In general, one thing I want to say is that the design proposed before you tonight is based on sound, technical design and analysis by firms hired by Lennar that are licensed subject matter experts. Those designs were reviewed and approved and brought before you tonight by the technical expertise of your city staff. Lennar stands behind the expertise of our design team, and they're here to answer any questions that you have. And we also stand behind that of the city staff and their review. This, again, is a designated housing element site. We are following the rules of a density bonus application. There was a comment about the historic view that was brought up while we were submitting in the process of bringing the project before you. We analyzed that, did a view sim, and provided that to the city to show that we do not negatively impact the historic view shed as it's required. A question was made about the emergency vehicle access. That gate will be designed to the specs of what the city fire department wants so that it can automatically open and residents can go in and out as necessary in the case of an emergency. Again, our technical team is here to answer any questions that you have as well as I am, and we appreciate your time and consideration and encourage you to vote in favor of the application.
We still have one more public?
Yeah.
Okay.
Doug Miller, please.
Presentation? Okay.
We'll wait.
So I'm Doug Miller. I live at 750 Plato Place. I and the bobcat that walks from this property onto my yard every night live right next to the property. At the meeting last summer, there was a lot of discussion from the developers about how some of the waivers that they were requesting, they needed to make it work for them. And so I started to worry about Lennar. They must not be doing very well. And so I pulled up their public filings to learn a little bit about them. So Lennar, the large public company, worth $37 billion, okay? In 2022, their home building revenues were $32 billion. And they had a profit on home building of $6.8 billion. Next slide. So where does their money go? The top six, I says five, top six executives in Lennar brought home $110 million last year. The shareholders received $438 million of dividends and also had a 47% increase in their share price. Next slide. So the representatives over the last several meetings have said that they can't do these things because it doesn't work for them otherwise. So I dug in a little further to see what a project needs to do to work for Lennar. They base their evaluation of their project based on gross margin, cost versus sales versus cost. On average, they make 27% on their projects. Okay, they also said, there's plenty of land out there. If a project doesn't meet our specs, we'll move on, we'll do something else. Next slide. I took average townhouse price in Encinitas, about $1.1 million, multiplied that times 149 units, $172 million in sales revenues for this project. At a 27.2% margin, that's $47 million in profit. Okay. Next slide. They can do fewer units. They can do more low-income units. They can bury the power lines. They don't need free land. They can make some investments in traffic abatement. They can do the sidewalks. Or they can go. Either way, Lennar is going to be just fine. Thank you.
Does the developer want to comment on that before I close public comment? Yeah? All right. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to close public comment. We will be moving on to commission deliberations now. Took my speaker off. Everyone's still good? Let's dive in. We have a lot to talk about this evening. I could kick it off if someone wants to jump in. You cannot hear me? No. Am I not? Really? Okay. I'm sorry. It's rare for me to hear that people cannot hear me. Usually I hear exactly the opposite, and I apologize. I'm going to start off by kicking off there. I've got my list here. Now, this is not my first large housing project, and I learned the hard way what I can and cannot do, and I'm going to do everything I can, and we'll see how much we can get. Now, different from cases in the past as a housing element site, there are things I have more restrictions on me from the state and from HCD. So there's limited, we can't force, there's some things we can't force and other things we can work around. At the end of the day here, there's going to be infrastructure improvements that Piraeus needs, that our surrounding community is going to need, and I'll be quite honest with you, we are not going to be able to make this developer pay for it all. So we are going to I'm hoping we're going to make a list, because it's going to take 3 years for this thing to be built. The state has mandated a lot of high-density housing on us and hasn't really given us anything that we really need, which is if they want to give us money, we want money for the infrastructure that we need to build to make these things work. This is not the only housing element site impacted this way. I'm thinking of the Clark Avenue apartments, the Vulcan apartments. They're all big projects. They're projects that theoretically our town could handle and probably will in the future, because, we're going to grow. From what I've heard, you were here 48 years ago. I'm betting there wasn't 68,000 people living in town. 10, 20 years from now, there's going to be even more. And it's just the way of it. Infrastructure, better infrastructure needs to be built, different infrastructure. It's going to cost money, and the state really is not going to allow us to get it from everyone. So at the end of this meeting, I'm hoping that we don't just do our job, our due diligence with this particular project, but we actually detail the things that need to happen to Piraeus and to basically what I think of as old Leucadia. I live on the other side of the highway. Union Street gets bisected by the 5. I mean, a lot of you, if you've been here a long time, you probably remember when somebody took a knife across our town. And it's left us a bunch of these weird little byways. I mean, Piraeus comes up just too close to where the highway is. Clark Avenue, that whole mess over there. There's a lot of, Vulcan does some weird little twists that you can only figure out if you look back at the maps from 1880 something, or I've got the ones from 1910. I can see before La Costa used to cross the railroad tracks. So I'm hoping to work on my due diligence here, but I'm also looking at what we need in this area. First thing, we're building a housing element site that has a pool and hardly any other amenities, nothing for children. It's 149 homes. They're going to be right near the highway. They're probably going to be affordable by Encinitas standards, which tells me there's going to be families living there. Families are going to want to go to the park. There's no park. There's no playground. The only way they're going to get there is they're going to walk along Piraeus, whether dangerous or not. They're going to walk along Piraeus to Olympus Park, because Olympus is awesome. And it also has no parking. It's 0.4 of a mile. I've measured it. It's doable. We could actually, as people point out, Piraeus is a racetrack, and we could choke it down, and we should choke it down. And we could be putting in, even if just like cheap DG paths along the side near the highway, so that people could get from this new housing development to where they need to go. We also need, we need to do something going up to Plato. So I know, now Sheila Cameron, you brought up $392,000, $689.50. I've listened to everything you said. And I actually re-listened to it so that I could make notes. So 392 grand, it's not going to buy us a lot of hardscape. It could, if it was used creatively, provide DG paths going up Plato. It could provide another DG path leading from this project towards Olympus Park. It could pay for undergrounding the utility lines, which is just mind-boggling that we're going to leave them there. It's going to, streetscape on North 101 has been delayed because they've now got a grant to put in the $4 million drainage system that was required. They came really close to building a lot of expensive infrastructure on top of it, and then having to dig down and do that. So this is the only opportunity to get these power lines down. And let me see, staff, what is the north to south distance? How many, I know it comes into like around $700 a foot for undergrounding traffic lines. It's just a total ballpark estimate. Is that 1,000 feet? Is that 1,200 feet? 1,600? I could pull out my map and figure it out right now. Sorry, I'm not the question you were expecting to answer, but.
I wouldn't be able to estimate that based on the topography as well.
Okay, no, just how far along is it? You know what I mean?
Oh, the actual length of the transmission line?
Well, no, I mean from the developed part of this project. I should be able to come up with
Oh, I see what
a
you're saying.
rough, let me see, 30. Looks to me like, from building 1 to building 8. It's honestly, this is not something the developer's got in the top of his head. Mine was just coming up because of, assuming it's like 2,000 square feet.
It's about 1,000 feet.
It is
more or
about
less.
1,000?
I mean, yeah.
So that's like maybe figure $750,000 to underground those parking lots. Does that sound about right?
The literature was estimated at $1,070,000.
We're not really supposed to be taking public comment right now, but I can't hear you anyway.
It's all in the literature, though. It's in the literature. It's over $1 million.
Okay. Well, so my ballpark just came in at 750. $1 million's probably more accurate. It still doesn't, 392 doesn't pay for that. Now, there are a lot of good ideas that were brought up, things that need to happen. One is the deck lighting, the parking lot lighting. I have a question. Anna, you might actually be the one for the dark sky mandate, which I'm familiar with. I didn't really have time to dig it out of my thousands of pages of code. Does that exist as a
Not within
real
our
thing?
municipal code or general plan. It is not within our standards, no.
Okay. So it is common practice, and I think Lievenhain is the only one I know that actually has it written into their specific plan, the dark skies mandate. Leucadia doesn't have it, and honestly, Sheila, like,
We were a dark skies neighborhood. It's been in every other
I live in a dark skies neighborhood. I totally get it, but I'm telling you you can't call it a mandate if it's not written down. And we are going to do our best to preserve the dark skies if possible, but we can't, if we make a decision based on a statute that's not written down, it doesn't really exist, and it will be overturned. So it's better if we address the situation as it is.
This council wouldn't dare do that.
We'll have to see. Let's not give up on, someone may do something that we don't like sometime in the future. This is tonight. This is where we work on this project tonight. So garage parking, I think we should, if possible, mandate people are parking in their garage. I think if there's nowhere to park, they'll do that regardless. Concerning off-street parking, I know that we just permitted another neighborhood for permit parking, and it may be required in this case. I don't know. I don't have a solution. I'm not going to propose one this evening, but it is a problem. It will, honestly, I don't know how much of a problem it will be. It will, I live on Orpheus, and people now, it's like every time there's an event downtown, people park all the way up and then up my street, farmer's market again, 5, 6 years ago even, nobody ever parked in front of my house. 10 years ago, it was my next door neighbor, and that was it. It's, people will walk if they have to, but will they park their car a million miles away? Generally speaking, they're going to avoid that. But it might happen. Certainly, here's one that's super easy, and we'll send this as a recommendation to council, and probably, I don't know, is Abe Bandigan hanging out back there? The left turn pocket on Piraeus is insane. You can only back up 5 cars there, and it's really a wide road. And I think with just paint on the road, I think so I'm not going to be designing any of these, but I am going to hopefully recommend these. And May 24th is the city council is going over the budget again. They're probably hoping to just finalize it, but it's a good opportunity if people want to talk about projects that need to be not necessarily funded this year, but on the list, on the CIP list. That's how things get done. Honestly, I'm a little concerned about the retaining walls. I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming it's the engineering is good. Yeah, I know. Bit of an assumption. I'm also concerned about the street vacation, which is arguably is an acre of land. And I'm wondering if we are giving that away, whether we could, trade it for the other half of undergrounding the parking lines or the electric lights. It feels like there's a deal to be made here, because part of this is that.
How can you vote on unknowns? I don't understand that.
I don't understand your point either, sir. I've read 2,000 pages of this documentation. I've been following this thing since it was first approved. I don't really think it's a great place for it, but it's here. It's in our thing. It's one of the 15 housing element sites. So I don't understand your point. I would say, yeah, no
Kevin?
comments. We'll cut this out, but we're not going to have debates from the audience. I'm sorry. Concerning reopening Piraeus, it's an awesome idea. I honestly don't understand what's going to have to happen for that. And again, certainly we can't force this developer to handle something that's 2 miles away. Those are my opening comments. Who wants to take another shot at this? Thank you, Susan.
Well, I do have some positive comments for the project. First of all, I think that the all-electric, 149 kilowatt solar, those are good things. EV charging stations in all garages, I'm for it. All units are for sale. Thank goodness, finally a project where the units are actually going to build generational wealth. I'm happy to see that. It does add 15 very low-income units, 50% California native plants, dedicates some open space, although it's actually unbuildable. But still, it's open space. The negative outweigh it, unfortunately. It does destroy the unique rural quality of life in that area. It's not compatible with the single-family, one-story, predominantly homes. Only 15 affordable units, when originally the site was supposed to have 208. I recognize the no net loss concept, and I want to just put quotes on that word concept. No net loss is a concept, but the reality is that we're building a lot of luxury, adult-oriented homes in this project, and only 15 very low-income units with no playground for the kids. So yeah, you could walk down the unsafe street without sidewalks to Olympus Park, which has no bathrooms and no real parking. So I don't know. Then the other things that I don't like, I don't see an independent hydrologic study, geologic study that backs it up. I don't see structural engineering that's sound from an independent source. I think after 23 years of drought, asking to not underground utilities and other waivers and make a lot of money and take an acre of Encinitas land as a gift is a really big ask. Development on greater than 25% slope with encroachment of 40%, that's a really big ask because it's a safety issue to have that huge amount of retaining without adequate. And although there is a study, a hydrology study, provided it's an old study, we've had a lot of rain and the ground has been saturated, and I'm sure that a seepage study that's current would be very different than one after 22 years or 23 years of drought. So I don't know if the city is really indemnifiable. I don't really know how the city liability would be if there are problems with that. You know, if there's a landslide or seismic activity or rockfall or whatever. I think that a lot of the public comments don't carry weight, but this comment that we have from Caltrans is a safety issue. And so this is really the overriding negative. Caltrans says that they would require a Caltrans encroachment policy exception. And it says here that the proposed diversions and potential adverse impacts to Caltrans facilities, specifically the culvert located near I-5 just west of Purius Street, are a problem. And they basically do not support the project. So I think that although this project, it does have positive aspects, it gives us a pittance of affordable housing. What we really don't get is safety with the huge amount of retaining without a current hydrological study to back it up. The developer gets a lot of money, but what do we get in terms of safety? The kids walking to Capri School, what are they going to be thinking? And then the air quality is another negative. The MERV 16 air filters that are required because it's in a, what do we call this? A non-attainment ambient air quality area. It means basically you're right next to a polluting source that requires these heavy-duty filters to make it livable, safe, and for people with respiratory issues, it's not going to be a good place to be. So let's see. And then the other thing that really is of concern is that for the existing residents of Encinitas who bought in this neighborhood, you like your view. You have solar access, and this project will block solar and will block view, potentially. We're not really sure. So those things, the way that I look at a project, I will look at it from the standpoint of what we're mandated to do, right? We are mandated by the state to build affordable housing. But the overriding thing is safety. And so is this project safe? I question it. As an architect, I question the height of that retaining wall without more current studies. I question the traffic for kids in the neighborhood. I'm just not sure it's safe. The utilities undergrounding them also protects you from the EMF, the electromagnetic frequency. And I think that this company surely makes enough money that they can afford to underground that utility. I think that they probably could afford the project with fewer units as well, or smaller units, more affordable units. The project does show some restraint in how they offer 149 instead of a much higher number, but actually the constraints of the site are significant, and it's probably more affordable to build fewer units in some respects. In the dedication of the 5.5 acres of preserved land, well, it's land that can't really be used by residents, but maybe for wildlife next to the freeway. How much wildlife does want to be next to the freeway? I kind of question. But this area is in a historic viewshed, and the Planning Commission evaluates historic viewsheds on a case-by-case basis, which is why we came before us predominantly, the main reason why. So the big question, will there be an adverse effect on health and safety? This is my question that I'm asking myself. And I also would have a question for the applicant. I want to know how many of the trees that they're putting in are California native trees. And okay, and that's pretty much everything that I have to say on it.
Thank you, Susan.
So I have a couple of things. One is a question, I think, for staff regarding, or the applicant, regarding the undergrounding of the power lines, because I think there's some unique issues here that I've seen regarding the undergrounding of the power, regarding private property issues, steep slope issues, and habitat, if there was going to be undergrounding of these power lines. Is there somebody who could speak to those things?
Yes, I can speak to some of that. So there are certain utility poles that are within private property. The utility line also runs, I can show an image of it just to kind of show it a little better, but it runs through the area that's going to be proposed open space. So there would be substantial air quality and potential cultural issues, cultural resource issues in order to underground that area. And it would also still result in a pole at the bottom of at the project frontage, because it still has to go across Highway 5.
Can you explain what the issues are regarding the private property?
I'm sorry?
Can you explain what the issues would be regarding the private property? It's my understanding that there would need to be permission and then access onto the private property. And how is that done?
The applicants can speak to that for the private property owners they reached out to, but this is an incentive they can request through the density
I
bonus.
understand that. Thank you. Sorry, turn my mic off. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the sidewalk or a path from Plato to Capri, because I kind of see two issues with this. One is we do have one speaker, or we've had a lot of speakers who said there should be some kind of path to meet up with the other sidewalk, and then there's others that say there's not enough room for a path. And I've taken that road many times, and I've seen the road. And the only way I think that you could get a path on Plato would be for the city to take back property that's currently being used by the people who own property on Plato. So, you know, I haven't seen anybody step forward to say, I'm willing to give up, I'm willing to be okay with the city taking back its own property in order to put a pathway or sidewalk on Plato to get to Capri. So I do understand that it is a safety issue for cars and bikes and children walking up Plato to Capri, but I think it's also going to be pitting neighbors against neighbors and against the city if there's a movement toward taking the city's property, because it really is the city's property, the city's easement up Plato to put in some kind of pathway. So that's just something I wanted to just say, to have it out there. And the other issue is, and people had some concerns about Capri being at capacity, but the school district does have the ability to redraw its boundary lines, which is probably going to have to do with a lot of these housing projects that are coming into Northwest Leucadia. Because I took a look at the elementary school boundary map just today, and I'm familiar with it because I live in the community. But I wrote down the list, but right now, the housing projects that are within the boundary where the kids would go to Capri if they didn't do a transfer is Fox Point, La Costa 48, Clark, Sunshine Gardens, Vulcan, and Piraeus Point. Okay, so clearly, within the next few years, as these projects are built and children move into these apartments and condos and houses, the Costa 48's a subdivision, the school district is going to have to redraw its boundaries, and they will redraw their boundaries so that the kids that live at Piraeus Point go to Capri because they're so close, and the kids that live further away from Capri, probably mostly on the east end, over on the other side of Saxony, will go, or over by Encinitas Boulevard, will go to schools that are further east. So that's just something I wanted to kind of talk about, to put out there. So I do think the biggest concern with traffic on Plato is cars having to drive into the neighborhood in order to go to Capri at particular times of day. Another unpopular idea for some people that live on Rainbow Ridge would be the reopening of Rainbow Ridge in order to allow access to Capri from Rainbow Ridge. So that could be tried. That's not within our purview, but that's within City Council's purview because they put in the gate and they can take away the gate. So I think that all of these things are important to look at and are important to understand, but I do think at the end of the day, what we have to do when we're making our decision is we have to follow the law and we have to make a decision that is a lawful decision. So I said some of these things because I want you to understand that we do understand everybody's concerns. I live in Leucadia. I live in very northwest Leucadia. And my neighborhood is going to be very significantly impacted by a lot of the projects. And I understand congestion, I understand all of these, the sheer number and percentage of housing elements that went into Northwest Leucadia. Okay. So they're there, and now is the time, and they're coming before us, and by one, we have to make a decision on them, making a decision following the law that is given to us and that we must follow. So that is, I'm going to tell you that I am going to do what I think is the thing that we have to do, that is the legal thing to do.
I think I would echo what Chris is saying, that really our discretion here comes down to the objective design standards. And there's several things I really don't like about the design of this project, and there's about 7 of them. Unfortunately, as I scour through our design guidelines, there is nothing that says that they can't do what they have done. If there's a silver lining here, our new objective design standards, there's 7 items in there that would all have prohibited some of the design elements that I find objectionable. And so I would have more latitude in what I turn away. I hear all the talk about traffic, geology, wall structures. We're not here issuing a building permit for the walls or the engineering of it. That stuff will all come as a building permit when the applicant is ready for that phase. And so I don't think any of those pertain to or a justification for denial of the project in themselves. Particularly traffic and school capacity, things like that. Those decisions were made at a policy level years ago when this site was put in as an R30 overlay zone, right? So it's not really within our power to retroactively withdraw it. And so given that, the 2 areas that I had 3 areas that I had on my list for discussion with you guys. The right-of-way vacation. I feel like that's something that the city is giving to the developer, and it would be reasonable to expect a compensation for that, or some sort of benefit why we would vacate the right-of-way there. Parking, I have on my list as well, but I have a slightly different bent on it. I agree that residents should park in their garages and all that, but I would encourage them to improve the right-of-way with on-street parking there. I'm not sure why we would purposely try to remove parking from around the perimeter of the site if we suspect that there's not enough garages on-site for that.
I don't think there's on-street parking on Piraeus or Plato in that area.
But if we're dedicating, we're vacating land, they can widen, that section. We don't have to affect the traffic lanes, but they could add a 10-foot stall and then there's stuff. But in my opinion, but there's other people that might have different view on that.
I think they wanted the extra space so that they would have room for that biofiltration basin without taking away from the development itself.
Right. I understand, the developer gets to define the project that they want to build. They get to request the incentives that they feel are necessary. And the onus is on the city to demonstrate to the developer that they don't require those. We can't just say, we think you get enough profit and therefore you should do these things. We have to demonstrate to them, and they're the ones who define what the project is going to be. And so that part is really, I think, hamstrings you back down to what are the objective things. In my mind, the street vacation is the one area that I think we have some latitude for discussion. I had dark skies on my thing, but if there's no dark skies ordinance in place, we can't unilaterally put one in place. And I'm generally opposed to putting in restrictions on these new residents that don't also apply to current residents. And so as it relates to roof decks and privacy and all that, if we're not regulating the roof decks of the neighbors up the hill, I don't know why we would insist on some higher level of scrutiny for these new residents that are coming in. So with that in mind, I'll leave it or open it back up to my colleagues to see where you stand.
Well, in response to that, I think that not undergrounding the utilities is actually worse than the street vacating, because I believe the applicant said the reason they wanted the street vacating was to plant trees and have more open space. And so I thought, well, less cars is good. And for me, they've already exceeded the minimum of the parking required for a density project. So I was okay with the street vacation, actually. I didn't bring it up, you might have noticed. But I'm not okay with leaving those utilities up in the air. And I'm actually not okay with a current hydrological and geological study that really pinpoints what's going on with that wall and the safety of it. My main concerns are for the safety and the well-being of the residents in the area that already are there. And if we're adding all these additional people, are they going to be safe as well, you know?
I do
For
think...
life safety, you know?
So regarding the undergrounding, I think that's a really high bar for us to demonstrate that they don't require that to make their project feasible from the way they defined it. So unless there's a strong safety element to why the power lines have to be undergrounded, I don't know that we have latitude to not grant that incentive.
If I may.
We have latitude to decline something unless they can't afford to do the project. If they don't get the incentive or the waiver or whatever that they're asking to have. And I believe they can afford to do the project and they can't afford to underground the utility.
We've actually run across, sorry, you go, Vana.
That's okay. If I may, I would like the attorney to speak to the purview of the incentives according to state law, if that's okay, before we go any further.
So because this is a density bonus project, the city has limited authority on what it can and cannot do. One of the requirements is that based on the amount of affordable housing, they're entitled to waivers and concessions. Here, they're requesting one waiver and one concession. So Commissioner Dalton is correct that essentially for both of them, the standard is essentially the same, that to obtain a waiver or a concession, for us to deny it, let's put it that way. If we're going to deny it, one way to do so is if there is a specific adverse impact on public health, safety, or on the environment, and then that's specific to incentives, and then for waivers, that's, and it needs to be based, and then I should say a specific adverse impact means a significant, and I'm quoting state law here, significant, quantifiable, direct, and unavoidable impact based on objective, identified, written public health or safety standards, policies, or conditions as they existed on the date the application was deemed complete. So if we have an objective standard that they're violating, then we're allowed to deny the requested waiver. But if they're complying with our objective standards, then we have to grant it, unless we can make the other findings. So yes, Commissioner Sherrod is also correct that there is language that talks about, so you don't have to grant an incentive. In this case, an incentive relates to money. Will this save the developer money? So if there's substantial evidence presented that there is no identifiable, and I'm quoting, identifiable and actual cost reductions to provide for affordable housing costs, then we could deny it. But if we don't have evidence that this will actually basically make it possible to build affordable housing, then we have to allow it.
So it's a little confusing. I would like more clarification. When we build and when we design to build, we can use a wide variety of materials. We can configure projects a wide variety of ways. Some ways are very expensive to do, some cost less. Certain amenities within projects add costs, such as a pool or things like that. And so where do we draw that line? Do we say, well, if your pool is $1 million and it costs $1 million to underground utilities, we want you to underground the utilities? I mean, you know what I'm not sure where we draw lines.
So under the Bankers Hill case, that essentially says the developer gets the choice of what to propose. That's the project. And if the project complies with the legal standards, then we have to approve it. So as far as incentives, the city has the burden of proof. We have to be able to, there's a court case that says this. The city cannot require an applicant to prove that the requested incentives and waivers are necessary to make the affordable housing component of a project economically feasible. We have to prove that actually, no, you don't need this to make this economically feasible.
And if I may, Commissioner Sherrod, the incentive allowance is for density bonus projects.
Correct.
So when you're talking about a single-family home, that does not apply there. They can ask for it because they qualify as a density bonus project.
So if this was not a
course,
density bonus project,
understand
this would
that
be
part of it.
entirely different.
At the same time, you understand 149 units can be built at different scale. It could be an economy project, it could be standard or luxury, right? And the cost will be very, very different depending on how it's built.
But the developer gets to decide which level of construction he thinks or they think is sellable or marketable in the market that they're trying to sell the units. And so we don't have the discretion to say, build it cheaper and do the underground. They get to define the project. To me, if it was related to safety, the challenge I have with the undergrounding is that they're an existing condition above ground. And no one is saying that they're unsafe now. And so it'd be hard to come in and say, undergrounding them is somehow, they're not causing, their proposal is not changing a condition that isn't already in place. If they were asking to above ground the lines instead of underground them, then you might say, well, that's maybe less safe for us in some way. But right now, they're a fact on the ground. They're there. And it's easy enough for them just to say any extra cost, right? $1 million, $750,000, whatever. That's all an extra cost that we can't disprove to anybody that doesn't make a difference to them.
And we've seen so many density bonus projects over the years. I've seen so many, and it's like I've had, usually it's the same lawyer shows up each time, but it's made very clear that unless we can prove that, you know, that extra, whatever, it can be as little as $1,000, we have to give it to them because, hey, they would save $1,000. I have to prove that you would not save $1,000 by not doing something that costs money. It's, you know, state density bonus law has been around for a while. That was the first chain around our neck, and we've been dealing with that one as best we can. Now, housing elements, something new, but yeah, the incentives, it would be good if we could turn them down, but we can't. And quite honestly, if I was to spend some of the traffic fees here, I would not spend them on the power lines. I would spend them on either a simple DG pathway from this location up to Olympus Park, or I would look at what does it take to make a similar path up Plato. Now, I think one of you, sir, I think you have a house on Plato. Now, I know on Leucadia Boulevard from the 5 going down, they've only just started doing the work, but for decades, there was no sidewalk there. What happened, though, there was like a half dozen neighbors who basically got out there with shovels and kind of dug out the berm a little bit and put in a little blacktop path. I'm not asking you guys to get out there with shovels, but it did require the cooperation of the neighborhood. People who lived there said, well, this is crazy. People are going to get killed going down Leucadia Boulevard, so they kind of hacked out a little sidewalk. And the city actually went and repaved it and, looked into doing it up to code. Did that one go through, Anna? I don't think so, not yet. Leucadia Boulevard sidewalk project improvements from 5 going down to the roundabout.
Not that I'm aware of.
Not yet?
No, it says no.
But it did get fixed up. It's a necessary pedestrian access, and it happened just like the Beacons Beach walkways everyone talks about. It's like thing collapses, people get out there and fix it up. So here we are going to need to go through there. Staff, here's a question for staff. I've been told that it's unfeasible, and forget about who's paying for it right now, but it was infeasible to build a path up Plato without taking some property. Has anyone ever come up with a ballpark what kind of money that's going to take? How infeasible is it? Is it?
So, Matthew Edgeworth, traffic engineer with the city. So I do want to clarify the use of traffic mitigation funds. So those funds are restricted. So Sandag provides guidance in terms of what can be used for those funds. Those funds can only be used for the city's arterial roads, which are La Costa or Leucadia Boulevard. So Piraeus isn't classified as an arterial road. It's classified as a collector road. Same thing with Plato. It is classified as a residential local road. So the
Okay.
use of those traffic mitigation funds wouldn't be able to be used.
Well, thank you for that clarity. Now, does that just on La Costa? I mean, we also have Piraeus where it comes up in that little S bend and hits La Costa, where we could certainly use some improvements concerning left turn lanes.
Correct.
Is that?
So you can definitely use it at an intersection at a main arterial street.
So that would be a possibility. Is that what I hear?
Correct. And then going back to your question regarding a DG path along Plato. So the most recent city project that the city had regarding a sidewalk was out on McKinnon Avenue. That was about 1,200 linear feet in length. That came to about $450,000 in cost for construction. So with Plato, we're looking at about 600, 700 linear feet in length to kind of give you a ballpark estimate on where that would come in.
Yeah, $250,000 sounds like.
Correct.
Did I understand though that there would have to be like taking of land? Is that something that the city would have to then pay for and factor in?
Correct. So there are encroachments currently on Plato that go into the right-of-way, encroachments being landscaping or retaining walls. So the city would have to work with those private property owners to gain back the right-of-way in order to install the DG path or sidewalk.
Gotcha, yeah. I have more than a few of those along my road on Orpheus. Landscaping tends to grow out into the street. Interesting. So now the traffic mitigation fees now, it's like, are they have to go to a main arterial, or is it specified where they're gonna go? I mean, could it just go in a general fund and then stuff gets done, or can we
Correct.
specify it for certain locations?
So in the past, it's been used on streetscape, so on Highway 101. In addition, the city does have a traffic signal modifications fund where some of that money has been put to use. But it is up to council to decipher where exactly to use those funds.
So it's council's purview, not ours, to say where the fees from this one would go.
Correct. Many times the projects end up on the CIP list, and that fund is available to fund those CIP projects.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
So I have a question about the utility lines again. We do know that they generate EMFs and that those studies have shown that those are detrimental for health. So is our standard, our city standard, that new construction always undergrounds utilities normally?
That's my understanding, yes. Yeah,
Is that correct, Anna?
That's why they wanted the incentive.
There are certain thresholds that would require undergrounding for certain projects that engineering.
And why?
determines. It's the significance of the improvements that are being proposed. So if they did, interior remodel, it wouldn't trigger a requirement. But I don't know if engineering has the specific number of what the trigger of undergrounding is, of if it's 500 square foot addition or what the threshold is. But they analyze it on a case-by-case basis.
Mm-hmm. And it's a benefit for community character as well as health?
I would have to look at the standards of where that requirement comes from.
Thank you.
Oy vey. Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, looking at if this was not on ground that was so uneven, I mean, it's, our objective design guidelines did what we hoped they would do. And it was, a little bit of a chance. We put in a lot of like plane or restrictions. They had to have 5 different planes on all these buildings. Sounds really geeky and nerdy, but it was very, when Commissioner Ehlers was our chair, we went over this in great detail, trying to come up with an objective design standard that would allow us to kind of somewhat hold on to community character. Now, community character is a thing everyone likes to talk about. I like to talk about it, but I've trained myself not to. It's not enforceable anymore from a state level. It's just, as soon as you start talking about community character, they stop listening to you. So it's all objective design standards. And to an extent, it can be, some of this can be written in. To an extent, it can't really. But, what we count on is that it's an expensive place to build anything, so nobody's building cheap junk here. Yeah. The project's, it's tolerable as is right now, as projects of this size and scope go. It's nowhere near as big as it could have been. As Chris Ryan pointed out, probably can't get much bigger. It's an awkward piece of land. Commissioner Dalton, you brought up the street vacation, something that I had highlighted in very deep, lots of colors here. So I'm hoping to get things out of, I would love to see concessions. And here is one where we don't have to give away 0.96 acres. We can recommend against it. Council very well may overrule us, because this project as is written that cannot be done without that street vacation. And I don't know. I want stuff. I want Play-Doh. I want safe access to Olympus Park. Honestly, it's the only thing I really want out of this thing. I'm concerned about the retaining wall, but I believe it's, my experience, our engineers have said it's going to work. I'm reasonably certain it will. I'm not going to guarantee it. I'm not going to guarantee anything. I argued against a staircase down Beacons several years ago, because I was like, Beacons is, it's not going to go right. Well, it went a couple of years later. And, things do happen. I've seen, we just did, there's a project right next to Armstrong. I forget how tall that one was. That was well over 20 feet, the retaining wall. It's doable. And engineers are good at this kind of stuff. So while I'd like to make that the pivot point in this, I don't think I can. I'm rambling now. You want to take this over, Steve?
Well, on the retaining wall, it's important to me, I think that those are outside the setback. So I think there is a technical aspect of those, and that will be permitted as a building permit in a future process. If they were right on the property line, it might be a different matter to me. But I don't share the same concern for the structural stability of those. I was thinking maybe we could get a general sense of where we are. I had the right-of-way and parking on my list. I get the sense that Susan still has the undergrounding utilities on your list. And I just wonder if,
see us give that up.
I just wonder if we can't start to
let's
consolidate
narrow
That is an
down.
issue.
down to some, whatever issues are remaining.
If I may, if we're going to be speaking about the street vacation portion of it now, there is a condition of approval that requires city council's approval on the street vacation. So it's not a recommendation from planning commission because it is the purview of city council. So the condition is in there. It's based on that. However, what we can do is in our staff report of the street vacation to city council, we can give a background of what the desires of the planning commission are related to that item.
Cool, thank you, Anna.
Can I jump in here real quick on the street vacation? Can someone review for us how the street vacation affects the project? I know it's not, the city's not getting money for the street vacation, but what is being given, or what will it bring the project?
So along Plato Avenue, it is the bioretention basin, and along Piraeus Point, it's the project entrance, landscaping, and the retaining walls for the project.
How do the retaining walls, how do they affect the look of the project?
I can show you some visuals if you'd like.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, 1 second here. So you can see it from this one, the retaining walls and the frontage of the property here. Can show you this one.
Is it on the right, the project as it would be built? It does look like the residents behind it would lose their view. So I think we need a view study. We don't have a view study.
We don't have a view ordinance either. We have no view protections in Encinitas. Del Mar has a view ordinance, but Encinitas specifically does not.
I thought it's part of a historic view corridor.
So the project is, I can clarify that, there's a scenic view corridor from the Interstate 5 freeway, and then there's also a historic view designation from a World War II site, which is on Gascony Road. And that was analyzed as part of the project as well from that view shed with a visual sim. And I can show that if you'd like, but, okay.
Yes, show us.
So this is the current view here along Gascony Road from the monument that's there. And the proposed view, sorry here. This mouse is, sorry, this is the existing view, and when you look at the proposed view, it is not visible whatsoever from Gascony Road due to the elevation. And for comparison, just so everyone can see, there was an alternative done as part of the project that showed it at 65 feet high, and you'd be able to see that in the alternative. One second here. So,
I haven't seen these either.
so if you can see over here, there's a little building, like it's right about here. That's when, if it was 65 feet tall, where I'm pointing to. I can zoom in. This would be the proposed with the alternative at 65, so at 35, it would not be visible.
And I know this site very well. I mean, it was kind of interesting. Here, Sheila, you'll recognize this. I've got a separated copy of the Resource Management Guide from the General Plan, which I absolutely adore, and it's allowed me to have some feedback and make some changes on some other projects. Surfers Point was one that popped up to my mind. But honestly, you know, if anyone wants to look at this, this isn't really the view corridor. The view corridor is supposed to be protecting the view out. We also looked at this coming in along 5, where at the elder care center that'll be going along where the strawberry fields were, facing towards St. Alejo Lagoon. It's, you know, it's a stretch to say that this is, it's not going to be pretty, I don't think, but it's not impacting a scenic view corridor. It's looking at a dusty place that's now going to be having some trees and some buildings on it.
Chris, do you have any concerns about the view corridor?
No, I don't.
Sharon, Susan? You have concerns about the view?
Well, it looks like from what they showed, it looks better than I thought.
Okay.
We had public comment about it, and that's what triggered that.
I'd kind of like to try to focus in on
Let's narrow it down.
what is it that we want to achieve here, and, you know, vote up and down on something. Is there, I don't want to be the guy harping on the right-of-way, but that's about the only thing on my list, and I feel like that's about the only thing that I feel some discretion to ask, and so I wonder if we, what sort of trade-offs would we want to see in exchange for granting the right-of-way? Unless.
Are you talking about the vacation?
I'm sorry, the right-of-way vacation.
I think Anna said that actually is something that has to go to city council. Is that correct?
But I think we're going to have a recommendation.
It's going to go with our
We could have a
recommendations.
recommendation, yes.
You know, and we vote this way, and we recommend you put a fair market value on the 0.9 acre right-of-way or vacation.
And just for a point of reference, I track the real estate values for a lot of commercial real estate that changes hands here. And I remember it was a few years ago that this plot of land, after it was chosen as a housing element site, sold for $20 million. 6.93 acres, that's about $2.88 million per acre from a couple of years ago. So somebody valued it very highly, especially considering that were it not a housing element site, it could have sat there for sale for, like, you know, 25%.
I don't think we're going to balance the budget on the sale of this property, but I would say that there is some value to it for sure.
There is,
right?
yeah, it's not worth.
It's a remnant. There's no value to anybody else, right? You can't go sell that outside of this project.
No, but
I think for about an acre of land, they can afford to underground the utilities.
Well,
They're
again,
getting
though,
free land. they can afford to do it.
They
So maybe you would
perhaps-
suggest the value of the land was about, was equated to the value of undergrounding.
And honestly, I still don't think undergrounding is the most important thing. I think a sidewalk up Plato and some sort of pedestrian bike access towards Olympus Park, those are the two things that I want. I think those are the things.
I agree, those are safety issues.
Exactly.
And they're really high priorities. And the
safety issues.
undergrounding of utilities
and
some sort of walkway
here's something to think
would
about
be
now.
a
We're
pretty
looking
fair
at these-
trade.
We're looking at these people going to be coming in here, oh, these horrible new people. These 3-4 years from now, these are Encinitas citizens. So when we're looking at the safety here, we're looking at the safety of these new Encinitas citizens who didn't do anything wrong. They're just going to come in and spend an awful lot of money for a condo, townhouse in this town. And I want to make sure that if their kids are walking up to the school, I want to make sure they can do it safely. They're going to be walking to the park, I guarantee it. I don't want them dodging along Piraeus. The people will get killed. And I know Kathleen Lease has informed me that, yes, there is a kind of a zigzaggy walking path once you get up Plato, but, and I'm assuming people will learn where it is. I don't know where it is. I think you have to live there to know that. But still, it's like most people will just say it's a 4/10 of a mile to the park. They'll load their kids into a little Bob stroller and they'll hoof it down there.
So Kevin, are you saying that you would like to make the recommendation to council that the developer pay a fair market value for the vacation piece of land, the remnant land, and then do you also want to make a recommendation as to what we think it should be spent on?
Correct. That's exactly what I'm leaning towards. I'm thinking it should be those two things at the very top of the list.
With the understanding that in order to put some kind of path on Plato, the city would have to engage in the taking back of its property?
Yeah, and it's not like we have to buy easements. This is already the city's property. I mean, I know how traumatic it's going to be. The people directly across the street on Orpheus, the street has literally migrated about 4.5 feet. So the whole crest of the road is off, the irrigation's off, and I've got it all spelled out what I need to do to make that go away, and it'll be traumatic. People in our neighborhood will be very unhappy. It's beautiful. They've got the most beautiful landscaping that goes right out into the middle of the road. And obviously, I've been thinking about it for about 14 years now and have not yet acted.
So what do you think?
I think that a city like Encinitas already has a lot of pathways, like in Leeuwenhoek.
Yeah?
And I think that if it's done in a way that is green, sustainable, with plantings, maybe a little split rail fence or something for safety from road traffic, like in Leeuwenhoek, some of those pathways have. It could be something that's viewed as an amenity rather than a takeaway from the community, something that's added to the value of the community. I don't know, but I think that the cost for pathway has to be less than a hardscaped. And
Well, I think we got whatever, $250,000 to $400,000 for an actual sidewalk. So I think part of the recommendation would be some sort of a path up Plato. Doesn't need to happen tomorrow because these kids aren't going to live there because there's nothing but a hill there right now. But within a few years, it will. I think that the pathway, I think Piraeus needs to be redone. We need to have both ped and bike access along Piraeus, and it's a big stretch. Not going to happen all in one hunk. I was thinking that perhaps the section from Plato to Olympus Park, that one little stretch could be done where we could do kind of a pilot project. It's like, let's narrow everyone out. Let's do a couple of raised speed bumps so that when you come there, you got to slow down for that little stretch. and on the right will be bike lanes and a walking path. If it works, then it's doesn't need to be crazy expensive, doesn't need to be a lot of hardscape. If it works, then, you know, the city, it'll be on the CIP list, and we'll advocate for it to extend end to end.
I think also the terms of addressing the signal that people have been very vocal about, traffic signal improvement, and also maybe the city council, just as a recommendation, needs a work plan for reopening Piraeus to the south, because it was promised
At least as,
to the community,
you know, put it on
for
the
years
CIP
already.
list, do a design study on it. What really is involved? Most people don't seem to know. Now, one recommendation specifically is we do have the traffic fees. We can't say where they go. Council's going to say where they go, and they can only be spent on major arterials like La Costa. So I think we specifically want to recommend that those funds go towards enhancing that intersection with Piraeus and La Costa, because
I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, right?
all right.
I like the way Chris summarized it, and
Okay.
that you put it out initially, that if you were to put a value on the right-of-way dedication or street vacation, that money, we would recommend it be spent towards a safe path to Capri School or a safe path to
Olympus Park.
Olympus Park.
Yes.
And really, it's
Or
on
both.
the
I
council
like
to
that.
prioritize it, and it may not go that way, but that's our recommendation. And I think everything else is starting to get out.
Oh, yeah, but the last one I brought up is separate from the vacation, because they're actually, we're getting $392,000 in traffic mitigation fees.
And that goes into a capital improvements project, and that's up to them to decide where they
Right, but
prioritize it.
we're sending other recommendations that they kind of squeeze the developer for this vacation to get some needed improvements. This one, they don't need to squeeze anybody. It's money that's coming in anyway.
So I don't know that I would support that, that we would make a recommendation that that money be used at that particular intersection. And I have to speak for the rest of Leucadia when I say that.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Chris, that totally makes sense. Now I know. But I think that is, regardless, is something that even if this money doesn't go there, I think we should be advocating for this. The CIP process, when did the CIP process happen last? Do you remember, Anna? Was that this year, March or so?
Yes, they just did in March.
So now, is that a biannual or an annual process? Sorry?
Annual.
It is annual. So this coming March is the CIP, and there's going to be a big build-up to it. I generally have a list of projects that I want on the list. I'm mostly interested, and this is one I'll share. This is a good strategic thing. It's hard to get money. It's easier to get people to put it on the list with no money. And it's called an unfunded CIP project. Keeps them from going away, and eventually we get extra money. Ron, you've probably seen it happen a couple of times. Most people have gone through the CIP process, at least as it used to be. This is where we start working towards the things we need. And this one's cheap. I mean, the restriping the La Costa, I think I'll go to the Traffic and Mobility Commission next time they meet and just tell them they should do this, because it's so cheap. It's like an easy fix. There's only 4 cars that can stack up there. It's crazy. And it's painting the road. There's no... I can't really hear you, but we're not really supposed to be having back and forth conversations with the audience. You understand, right?
Kevin, I feel like we're finding some consensus on this, the
believe
street
so.
vacation.
I
And
think so.
I'd make a motion that we approve the project with the recommendation that the city council put a fair market value on the street vacation, and that the money from that street vacation be put towards a safe path to Capri School or a safe path to Olympus Park.
That's kind of awesome. I will, believe it or not, I will second that motion, but I think we, as you mentioned before, we'll discussion.
Do we need to make the other specific findings as well regarding the? Is there any?
Do we?
For the
I
motion,
can-
I just want to make
I can
sure
make the
that we
findings
had all the
as
correct language in
outlined
the
in the
motion.
staff report.
Yes.
Right, so the staff recommendation, right, I think it's inclusive of the staff recommendation, and that includes all the legally required findings.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't have any conditions. I printed out all the conditions. I didn't see anything I needed to change. The EIR, I've been analyzing that for like 6 months.
So do we have a motion and a second?
Yes.
Yes, we do. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. Motion passes 3-1 with 3 of the sitting commissioners voting yes. Commissioner Sherrod voting no, and Commissioner Prendergast absent. He's recused. And honestly, we are done with this meeting. I'm calling the meeting closed at 9 o'clock. Thank you very much.